Hi. Good morning. I'm so excited to see you guys, and I'm so excited that we're in a place where it is Saturday morning before noon, and there's like so many of you gathered to talk about health. This is a joyful thing. There are smiling faces. And that's a lot of what I want to talk to you guys about today, is a little bit my story, how I got here, how I stay here, building that container, but really talking to you guys as the teachers and the innovators and the new recipe makers, and really grounding into love and bringing that to health, and falling madly in love with the abundance and the feasting and the pleasure and the sensuality around health. And I really see that as the sustaining force that's going to move us forward. The story of Moon Juice starts when I'm 5. And I grew up in Manhattan, and I was in very poor health, and that was grounded in my bronchioles. And we had gone through the pipe of Western medicine, and there was a lot of pink bubble gum syrups and pokey things and doctor's appointments, and none of that was helping. And I was in a health food store with my mother, and there was an Ayurvedic doctor visiting from India. And he heard me coughing, and through divine intervention comes over and looks in the whites of my eyes, looks at my tongue, couple of questions, and in moments, he has surmised that the life experience I was having, that I could barely breathe, I did not have good sleep, I could therefore not play the way I wanted to play in my body, he decided within moments that it was sugar, wheat, and dairy. Which, to everyone sitting in the crowd, Ayurvedic doctor, sugar, wheat, and dairy, yeah, obviously, makes sense. In the early 80s on the island of Manhattan, where there was little to eat outside of sugar, wheat, and dairy, especially for children, this was radical. But it was so radical, we tried it out, and within 72 hours, I had moved from this life experience over here to a completely new reality. And it was in 72 hours. So at that moment, I profoundly understood at 5, what you put into your body directly affects your life experience. And so I began thinking about the life experience I wanted to have and what I needed to put into the machine to make that happen. And things were going really well, and within weeks I thought, this was a fun ride. And now I'm at a birthday party, and there is an ice cream cake with rainbow sprinkles and mermaid candles, and I'm not even going to go for the pizza, but if I take this little piece of cake into a dark corner with no one watching, I'm sure I can, just sneak that in, make that happen. And within hours, I had learned that absolutely not, that could not happen. And again, what I put into my body was directly affecting my life experience in a few short hours. I could no longer play at that party the way I wanted to. I could not sleep that evening. So I grounded into that. I was annoyed, but I accepted it. And it activated the little tiny alchemist in me. And that little tiny alchemist made it a goal to figure out what ingredients I could put into my body that made me thrive, and how can I put those into traditional settings so that I didn't miss out on anything in life. And so the journey began. And my first foray into it that I really remember was not a culinary success, but, and don't judge me by this, because I've gone a long way. Like 30 years later, I'm milking Brazil nuts and making tiny raw donuts, and things are getting really good. But it was puffed Aztec grain and apple juice. And I really wanted to join in on this experience that children were having with a bowl, and a spoon and a carton of milk and this like fantastic box with leprechauns or bunnies and loops and and like the milk would get blue. But a big part of that was sitting around the table, and it's almost, I think about it now, and it's a mental exercise for a child to be able to get the cereal into the liquid in the spoon and pull it up to your face, and the triumph of being really good and drinking the liquid at the end. And that was a tradition I wanted to partake in. And so I went to it. Aztec grain, apple juice, did the whole thing. And it was a success. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this thing. I am going to, for the rest of my life, figure out how to partake in this. And I've gotten better, like I said. So life goes on, and this is what inspires me, this is what moves me. I move into my teens, and again, early 90s, Manhattan, there is a lot of work and energy going into learning disorders, depression, anxiety, sort of diagnosing children especially with this at, just rampant rates. So I fell into that category, and I first got diagnosed with a learning disability, which required me to go on speed in a prepubescent state. And then it was shortly thereafter, it turned out that I had an anxiety disorder, which was shocking considering the young teen on speed, might be anxious. So there was another chemical to help with that. There was a downer. And on all these uppers and downers, it was then discovered that I was depressed, or maybe it was bipolar, or maybe it was just depression. And we went back and forth. And so, by the time I was 16, I had been on a cocktail of every crazy, wild pharmaceutical out there. And uppers, downers, stabilizers, all over the place. And none of that felt like truth to me. It really didn't. But that was the truth of where we were living. And my last diagnosis that I took from Western medicine was probably when I was about 17. And I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, or hypothyroidism, which is something that I talk to people about all day long. And it's rare that I meet a woman now who does not have something going on with her adrenals and thyroid. So I decided to unplug from the system. I took the synthetic drugs for a little bit for the thyroid. That, mixed with the cocktail of everything else, mixed with this is not my truth, really sent me out running. And that's probably a big reason that I didn't go to college. I just wanted out. I wanted out of the whole system. And that was a scary moment for me. The sugar, wheat, and dairy was, it was annoying. It was a bummer. And then it kind of turned into a fun game. But standing in the face of what our society said was the absolute truth, and going against what men in white coats and my parents were saying was the only way I was going to survive, and should I unplug from this, I would be very unhappy and then I would die. That was a little bit of a scary moment, but I took a deep breath and I said, I'm going to find another truth, and if I die trying, then oh well. Because this is not a life that I want to be living. And I know that there is a different experience to have in my body. I know that there's a different experience to have in my soul. And there must be other people out there looking for that. So this is part of the reason that I'm so excited to stand here with you guys today and be here. So I went off and had many adventures, culinary adventures, and I studied with shamans and herbalists and acupuncturists and kinesiologists and light workers, and I tried it all. And there were ups and there were downs, but I found balance, and I found such strength and such balance with just basically using plants. And meditation and yoga, but really my grounding has been this container that I've created for myself and for my life experience with plants. And so the 6 things that I'm mindful of every day to build this container is the first one being eating more raw foods. And this doesn't mean going to a raw restaurant. This doesn't mean getting a dehydrator. You don't need to be eating raw nachos. You can simply have an apple. You can have a cucumber. You can sprinkle raw herbs on your cooked food. But being mindful of, did I eat raw food today? Did I get any in? Should I get a little more in? And the thing that happens with raw food is everybody wants to eat healthfully, and then they want the glowy, happy face, like now. Like, I've been eating really well for a week, where is my glowy, happy face? So raw food, you are well on your way to the glowy, happy face with just being mindful of that. And the next part of the system is alkalizing. And I totally nerd out to alkaline foods and, have started to learn pretty much every single food that I put in my mouth, where does it hit on that pH scale? You don't need to do that, though. That's like the odd game I play with myself called the alkalizer. I'm playing it in my head right now. But nature has color-coded these foods for us. So think green. There are also great apps out there and charts, and you can Google it and get into it. But if you don't want to do that, think green. It's very easy. And the nice thing about alkalizing, and alkalizing your system does so many things. Most importantly, disease cannot exist in an alkaline system. But my favorite thing was that I woke up to a new personality when I started to alkalize. And the person that lived in me that kind of had this constant, slightly anxious motor running that when triggered could also be kind of aggressive, that disappeared, that melted away in an alkaline state. And I realized, wow, that was not my personality. I was just a bit acidic. So I encourage that if you're feeling a bit acidic, we'll call it. And the next one is just being mindful of how much sugar you're putting into the system. So really trying to keep a low glycemic state. And one of the things that I went through personally, and I see a lot of people go through, is we're getting on the bandwagon to eat more raw foods and plant foods. And there are incredible packaged whole food organic options that we can quickly reach for in even gas stations at this point. I go to gas stations in the middle of nowhere, and they've got like an organic vegan thing for me, and it blows my mind. But you want to be mindful of the sugar count in that. So whether it comes in the forms of date, coconut sugar, being mindful of how many grains you take in, all of that is a glycemic load. And we want to be mindful of this because too much sugar in your system will actually stress your organs out, and it starts to stress your endocrine system out, and it starts to breed bacteria that we don't want in our gut, like Candida. So just being mindful of that. And the next three that round out our circle that we can live so happily in are my favorite. And I don't know which one is my favorite, but here comes the joy and the bliss and the seduction of the food and the feasting. And my three favorite forms of this are eating good fat. And if anybody wants to come back to my cabin and nerd out on the esoterics of omega and where we can find them and all of that, I'm completely available for that. But I'll give you the thumbnail now, which is if it is a plant fat and if it is raw, you're in good shape. Just go for that. And I add ghee to the equation. Ghee is a beautiful, beautiful medicine, and I say have ghee at least once a day. Put it in your tea, eat it on a spoon. It's delicious. Get into it. Don't fear the ghee. But these good raw fats, this was something that they are delicious to eat, and they're very easy to play with and make beautiful foods out of. But my diet, I would say, on most days is 60% fat. Actually. And as we're coming out of this 90s fat-free consciousness, and then we sailed right through the post-fat-free consciousness that included bacon and hamburgers without buns. I think we're finding ourselves in this really nice place of having reverence for good, healthy fats and putting those into our systems. And what I have found with loading that into my diet is that I have way more energy. The brain is fed. in a very deep way. I notice a huge difference in my brain function. And hormones. We make our hormones out of fat. So I actually have blood tests that show my hormones changing and really going into a wonderful harmony when taking on these fats. So I love thinking about the foods that we eat and how that adds to your life experience. So you can think about good fat. If your brain is functioning, if you have energy, and your hormones are flowing, that is going to directly affect the relationships you have, your job. I like real things like that. And the next one is cultured foods. And cultured foods are basically foods that are very rich in probiotics. And I prefer cultured foods and culturing my own foods to buying expensive probiotics that sit on a shelf for we're not sure how long, but I know they have those really incredible 500 gazillion live dudes that are coming into your system, but how long has it been sitting on the shelf and are they still alive? I find that a lot of times they've been compromised. With your live foods that you're making at home and culturing, like cultured vegetables, coconut kefir, nut milk Kieffers, nut cheeses. I mean, there's so many things you can do with it. They're absolutely delicious. You will feel called to eat them several times a day. There's something innate and ancestral in our system that wants those cultured foods. So you really satiate something deeply. You know that they're potent and alive. You've made them for, oftentimes as little as a handful of cashews or the cost of, half a cabbage from the farmer's market. So this is another one that gives you glowy, happy face. Culturing the gut. This is also another one that will change your personality. Once we have proper gut health, you can really dive into a calm and a joy that that comes from health. And the last one that I absolutely love, and I love playing with. I like to call them the kingdom of adaptogens. And adaptogens are, they are herbs that go into your system and they help you acclimate to stress. So they're not a stimulant, though they will give you energy. And they do wonders for libido and give you warrior-like stamina. But they're the great protectors of the endocrine system, which I'm always interested in. And they also taste wonderful. So things like maca and cordyceps, reishi, shilajit, all of these things pair so well with flavors like cacao and cinnamon. And so that's probably my favorite moment in the kitchen, is really becoming that alchemist that knows, wow, my adrenals need cordyceps, and cordyceps taste so good with chocolate, and I'm gonna make a chocolate shake and put cordyceps in that today and keep it low glycemic with some stevia, and I'm getting my good fats with the nuts. So they kind of all come together with these adaptogens. And what I can say about the adaptogens, and this was probably the last part of my journey, was I had built this container that we just spoke of. But when I put those adaptogens in, I mean, life went from here to just rocket ship over here. This is the bubble that I'm living in. And that bubble also includes meditation and yoga. But it was actually this bubble that I created first that actually got me to a healthy enough, strong enough, nourished place where I could have the neuron velocity, energy, and foresight to actually do my meditation every day and get into yoga and commune with nature in a specific way. So that's what I do. And if you forget all of this today, that's fine. The one thing that really keeps me going, and what I really want everyone to walk away with, is the love part. And health is often thought of as a detox and a fast and a cleanse and play hard, work hard, detox really hard. And that's not a sustainable approach. I haven't seen anything be successful long-term when people go at it with fear. And so this story that we are going to become extinct and we're all going to have cancer and be unhappy and ugly and die if we eat a certain way, where that may be true, we don't need to harp on that. That's not our story. We don't need to focus on that. Our story is that these foods are delicious, and they do wonderful things to the planet, and they can bring us together in ways you can't even imagine. And you will you will transcend to places you didn't know possible through eating these foods that are actually really delicious. And I stand here as somebody that worked in fine dining and has been a foodie my whole life. So I promise you, if it was not delicious and it didn't work, I wouldn't be standing here today. I would be, I'd have a different life story. As the leaders of the new world and the leaders of this movement, and I think you know what movement I speak of, we are all here for that. I ask you to just fall in love a little harder with your plant foods and share that with people. Because you are making the new traditions, and every time you have a birthday cake for a child that's sweetened with dates and cashews, that becomes more normal, and those become our traditions, and those children grow up, and that just becomes the standard. And we're in this really exciting place, and we're moving at such rapid speed. So we need you. We need you out there loving the food and feasting on it and sharing it. Thank you, guys.
My name is Jason Brown. A lot of people call my story the curious case of Jason Brown because they ask, why on God's green earth would this young man at the peak of his career in the NFL, making millions of dollars, walk away?